Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live on air, on your radio, in your car, if anyone does that anymore. Or, of course, you can catch us on any of your podcast venues, such as iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, nccradio.org, or download our own award-winning WHPC radio app. And podcasts of our show are also available after. So on the archives, you can find all kinds of links. Tell your friends to listen to a show you liked and join us in any way that's comfortable for you. Today, we're going to have on as our guest Mahesh Grossman, who is a somatic hypnotherapist, and we'll let him tell us what that means. And he is known worldwide for his hypnotic 1-minute anxiety solutions. He's also the creator of the Defy Trauma process, which finds the childhood root causes of whatever makes us anxious or triggered. His unique perspective is that healing anxiety and trauma isn't about analyzing our trauma stories, but rather releasing the subconscious mental and emotional imprints we still carry from them and transforming them into unconditional self-love. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mahesh.
Thanks for having me, Ellen.
Am I saying your name correctly?
You're saying it correctly, Mahesh in the flesh.
That's a good way to remember it. Now, tell us what this means, somatic hypnotherapist and CCHT.
Oh, the CCHT is certified clinical hypnotherapist. Somatic hypnotherapist is a term. I'm not the only one who uses it, but probably you'll find like one or two other people on Google if you search under it. So somatic, of course, means of the body, connected to the body. So the way my hypnosis works, I've found that the fastest way to get someone connected to their subconscious mind is to let them connect through their body, to connect to their body. So let's say I'm working with somebody who's dealing with anxiety or even dealing with a phobia. I have them remember a situation that made them feel anxious, and they'll feel it in their body again. And then I'll say, notice where you feel it. And I'm an empath, so I feel it too. Sometimes I'll just say, notice your chest or notice your belly. But that becomes the starting point for connecting to a story that helps you find out the root cause of what you're going through. So, for example, let's say you notice this feeling in your chest, I would then say, well, how old were you the first time you had that sensation in your chest? Were you 10 or under or 11 or older? And if you say 10 or under, I would say, well, were you 0 to 5 or 6 to 10? And we start splitting the difference till we get to an age. When we get to that age, then I can ask you things like, were you home or at school? And if you were at school, were you in a classroom or a hallway or the lunchroom or the recess, the playground? And eventually we get to the point where there's someone or something that upset you, something that made you sad or angry or scared. And it goes so fast.
So let's go back in time in your own experience, because, you obviously have a life history and various things you've explored deeply. What made you become an anxiety expert?
Well, it's funny. It started off, I didn't even know I had anxiety. And I read this book on working with anxiety through hypnosis. And I thought, wow, that's me. And so, I was losing jobs and tens of thousands of dollars as a ghostwriter in my ghostwriting business because I would be so stuck. There would just be so much procrastination. And so when I discovered how to work with anxiety, first on the surface, because the book I worked with gave me a pretty good clue on what to do to get through the surface issues. The big thing with anxiety, of course, is if you let anxiety stop you from doing something, then your brain says, oh, great, I just saved their life. I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to make it even stronger because this really works. It stops you from living your life, but it thinks it's doing something good for you. And so,
wait. What do you mean? What do you mean when you say it? Who is
it?
The
it being the anxiety.
Okay.
When anxiety, so we've got what I call the cave brain, or most people call it the amygdala, and a series of other parts of the brain. Amygdala means almonds because it's an almond-shaped portion of the brain. So I feel like that's not any better than cave brain. I think is better. The cave brain is its job is to keep us alive. And what happens when we get anxious is that I don't call it anxiety. I call it a pattern matching allergy. Because what's happening is our brain makes connections between whatever situation we're in, whether it's the physical things we're seeing or kind of a situation that has an emotional component that's connected to something we experienced in childhood. And it says, oh, this is the same thing. I better protect them. And that's why we get anxiety symptoms. It's like if somebody were attacked by a woolly mammoth as a caveman. And the woolly mammoth they were attacked near yellow grass. And they narrowly escaped with their life. And a few days later, they went to dinner at Grandma's cave, and Grandma made this really wonderful bison dinner. And then they went back to the back of the cave where Grandma's paintings of yellow horses were. The yellow horse in the painting would suddenly get your body, the caveman's body, ready to run or freeze or fight. Those are all what we call anxiety symptoms when your heart goes up, or you get nauseous, or you get sweaty. All these things are designed to save your life for something that has nothing to do with saving your life. You know, a yellow horse painted on your cave wall is not the same thing as being near a woolly mammoth.
But somehow you develop, or people develop, these association patterns that begin to act as a trigger. Yes,
but it's not conscious. It's just how the brain is designed to make sloppy pattern matches.
What about Defy Trauma? There's a process that you created called Defy Trauma. What is that about?
One of the things that I've discovered, and people have obviously been doing this a long time, but I've discovered is really easy to get to whatever it is underneath the surface that makes you anxious, or that triggers you, or makes you emotionally upset over something. This process, which I've developed over a period of years through my own inner work and then working with clients, takes you immediately to what's really bothering you, what the old stuff is that hurt you. What happened is, going back to the example of somebody who got anxious and they noticed where they felt in their body, and they noticed it was something that happened at school. And in one case, I had somebody with social anxiety, and the core wound they got to was something that happened in school. When they were in first grade or kindergarten or something, they did little angel pictures, drew them and cut them out and signed them, and the teacher put them all on the bulletin board. And this woman would get inordinately anxious at things like Chamber of Commerce meetings, and things that she needed to do to promote her business. And the reason, the core wound that showed up was she was in kindergarten with that picture of an angel on the bulletin board with her name on it. And one of the little boys noticed that her angel, maybe she didn't cut it out properly. And let's say her name was Susan. And he saw it and he said, "Oh my God, Susan has a penis. Susan has a penis." And that may not be a really big deal to a 40-year-old woman, but to a 6-year-old, that when everybody else starts chanting that with you, it brings up such profound material. So the Defy Trauma process helps you get in touch with what that is and to heal whatever it is on 3 levels. The first level is to be able to release the leftover emotions that you carry. And that's where the somatic hypnosis comes in, because the techniques I teach and work with somatic hypnosis are connected to your body. So when you have that feeling in your chest, let's say, There's ways of releasing it through kind of a combination of visualization and connecting to the body. So let's say you feel something in your chest, and you can imagine there's a fire hydrant right in that spot in your chest, and you can imagine connecting a hose to that spot, and then you picture yourself standing in front of the Grand Canyon, and you can let someone else hold the hose if you want, kind of as someone you love and trust. And you let that feeling in your chest and the water that's in the hose go into the Grand Canyon, and you keep going till either the Grand Canyon is full and then you let it drain and keep going, or you eventually get to a point, and this is universal with this process. Everybody gets to a point where there's just dripping left, like when you turn off the shower, it just drips. And so one portion of the Defy Trauma process is to release that feeling. And whether it's sadness or anger or grief, it's generally the same type of techniques. And that brings about a certain level of peace. There are another two pieces to the Defy Trauma process. Let's say you get back to the point where you say you discover that the issue is that your mom was just so darn critical. And I have kind of fill in the blank sentences. Usually it's something like, Mom, it really hurt me when you criticized me all the time, or blank, it really hurt me when you blank. And you say that in your mind to your mother. Again, this is a universal thing. Thousands of hours, I've seen this same thing over and over again, which is the mother in your mind, instead of who only lives in your mind, right? We're only talking to a part of ourselves. Your mom is nowhere to be seen, and lots of my clients have dead parents, so they're not talking. The mom says, yo, you just needed that. Or that's what my mother did to me. Or, I was trying to make your life better. And that's not what you want. What you want is a mom that says, I love you. I'm sorry. You're a great kid. I never should have done that. I won't do it anymore. Because we have that mother or parent or bully or whoever it is etched in stone in our mind subconsciously. And they are running us. And so the Defy Trauma process takes you to a place where you get that parent or whoever it is to be unconditionally loving. So you're actually being unconditionally loving to yourself. So that's another main aspect of the Defy Trauma process. Sometimes there are blocks that get in the way of any of the steps that we take in the process. And so there are ways to work with that as well.
And you work around it. So I want to remind our listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio or your favorite podcast venue. And you can always email us at whpc@ncc.edu or get in touch with me through naturalnurse.com. Our guest today is Mahesh Grossman, and he is a somatic hypnotherapist and also certified hypnotherapist. And we're talking about a lot of things that he offers. For instance, the 1-minute anxiety solution and Defy Trauma. And also you have a couple of websites. One is anxiety123.com. And then you also have Berkeley Hypnosis and Pain Management. So that's berkeleyhypnosis.com. What's the best way?
I would say that just anxiety123.com covers everything.
Okay, so that's the best.
I wanted to make it as easy as 1, 2, 3 for anyone who listens to a podcast or a radio show to get in touch with me. So I made it anxiety123.com.
Fine. So that's the one.
Links to everything.
That's the one that people should check out. And you also have an ebook called The 1-Minute Anxiety Solution. What's that about?
I found that the most important thing in getting over anxiety on a step-by-step basis is to not let it stop you, right? With otherwise your cave brain says, yay, I stopped them, I saved their life, let's make it worse. So you have to keep going, but it's really hard to keep going at whatever it is that makes you anxious, right? There's this big method that everybody loves called exposure therapy, which is do whatever it is that makes you anxious. And if you do it enough times, it teaches your brain that you're going to be okay, and it stops sending you anxiety symptoms, which is great. It works, but that's so darned hard. It's really, really awful to try to do something that you can't do. So I created this set of techniques, 57 different ways to lower your anxiety. Some of them are more common, and some a whole bunch of them are things I created for my hypnosis clients and for myself that instantly lower your anxiety enough in 1 minute to keep going at whatever's stopping you. So that fire hose thing, not only does it work for trauma, it also works to lower your anxiety. You can just do it and you will feel calm. Once all that water is gone, you will notice, let's say your anxiety is on a scale of 0 to 10 is a 6. It may not be a 0, but maybe it's a 3. And it's much easier to keep going at something that makes you a 3 than something that makes you a 6. And there are other things you can do, and sometimes you can do more than one. But it includes things like breathing techniques. It includes movement techniques. It includes some wordplay. And the biggest thing is it includes a lot of somatic visualizations, a lot of hypnotic techniques that you've never seen before.
So you're talking about hypnotizing yourself out of anxiety. What does that mean, to hypnotize yourself? See, I just want to share that, I almost don't know what anxiety means in terms of somatically, because I don't think I've ever experienced it truthfully in my entire life. I just have more of a Zen attitude where everything's external to me, whether it's good or bad. I don't react much either way. I just kind of watch it all pass by. So I always wonder what this whole big giant thing about anxiety is about.
Well, you must be one of the lucky people who doesn't have a lot of trauma in your life, because that technique, all the spiritual techniques, they work really well for things that are not kind of caught in your body and not automatic responses. Because those of us who've had a whole bunch of difficulty in growing up, our body sends us these unconscious things, and it's not, we're not necessarily, anxiety is not really about what's happening in the moment. It's the way the brain makes these weird subconscious connections to the past.
So do you think it's genetic at all? Because my dad also was a person just always calm. There was a lot of stuff that you could say, wow, this happened. But somebody else would react and he wouldn't, and I don't. So I'm just wondering if there's a genetic component.
I think there's an element of genetic. There's also an element of genetic in terms of trauma. That they actually have discovered that our grandparents and at least, and I've found it goes back to great grandparents for myself, can pass on their trauma through the sperm and the egg. And so if they have unresolved trauma, you actually carry stuff that doesn't belong to you. I call it the family curse.
Yeah, there's some more recent research about that, which is very interesting.
Yeah. And there's a way, and I work, and part of the Defy Trauma process includes healing that, because I have techniques that work with that as well. But, for me, the whole spiritual thing is like, yeah, it did what it did, but it doesn't do it. Just with people with trauma, if they go there, they're probably bypassing what's really going on in their body.
But you have some that you have developed, which are true anxiety melting methods. Now, do you feel someone has to be hypnotized to take advantage of these techniques?
Well, here's the magic. We all think hypnosis is this really special thing, but it's a normal state. So if you've ever read a novel and it said she saw a gray rock castle with a cherry red door, and you saw the gray rock castle with the cherry red door in your mind, you were hypnotized. That's pretty normal. If you've ever read a book or played a video game and somebody called your name and you didn't hear them because you were concentrating so much, you've been hypnotized. Or if you missed your stop on the subway or whatever it is. Hypnosis is really a state of either concentration, imagination, or connecting to your subconscious mind. And it's just really natural. When you go to a movie and you're sad when something bad happens to the main character and you're happy when something good happens to the main character, that's hypnosis, because it's not real, right? This is not even happening to real people. This is a story that actors are portraying.
That's true.
And yet we're all caught up in it. So it's a natural state. So even though these somatic visualizations, I call them, body-oriented visualizations, have a hypnotic quality, the state of self-hypnosis, you don't have to work very hard to go there.
So that's self-hypnosis. Now, if you're working with a client as a certified clinical hypnotherapist, then you are involved in that process.
Yes, because I have this way of doing things, and frankly, these days it's very rare that I do very much besides say notice where you feel that sensation in your body. Sometimes I have people who have a little more difficult going places, so then I might take them through a visualization or a breathing technique to get started. But 90% of the time, at least at this point, it all starts with wait. So you remember the last time you had whatever, let's say you're here for weight loss. It's like, well, remember a time you reached for food and you knew you were going to binge, even though you knew you didn't, even though you weren't hungry, you reached for the food. And notice where you just picture that again and notice where you feel that in your body. You're already once that, did you see how short that was?
Right. Now, if you met with someone, I imagine years ago it used to be more like only in person, and perhaps now you have now migrated to where you can do this virtually with someone.
Exactly, yes.
Which has been, if anything, a real positive outcome of that whole crazy pandemic we all went through.
Yes, and Zoom is great for this stuff. And it works the same way. First off, your eyes are closed for half the time. So does it really matter where you are if your eyes are closed? But also I've found that, I'm an empath, so I notice what's going on in my body matches what's going on in the other person's body, whether they're in Australia or they're, in the recliner that used to be in front of me in my office. And, this field forms between you. I don't know why, but it doesn't have anything to do with time or space or, location or anything like that. But suddenly we pick up on each other and things happen where people are more capable of going to the deepest places inside them when they work with me, because I've gone to these places for 37 years inside myself. And they may notice that they're releasing emotions through things like yawning and burping, their stomach growls, or little muscle spasms, or if they're blocked through from expressing something, then they may start coughing and then be able to say what they need to say. Simultaneously, because of field forms, not only do I feel kind of what's happening in their body, without doubt, I will burp during the session, and that's releasing emotion for someone. People have told me they feel better after I have a bunch of burping going on. But that takes place whether they're in my office or in Australia, as I said.
Right. This space doesn't matter, but you can do it on Zoom. So you can help through something that's not something someone may see as a deep hypnosis, where they're,
Well, here's the thing. You really only need to be about 12 inches deep. Say you've got a yardstick. It doesn't take that much. And for the kind of things I do, which are more interactive, it doesn't have to be that deep. I mean, to be honest, the first time I was hypnotized, and it was for weight loss, in like 1995, I was disappointed because these states were so familiar to me. It wasn't that different from meditating. It was more like meditation with a cause. It's not very hard to connect to your subconscious mind.
Right, but that's very supportive for people to know, but you know that better because not everyone has really studied hypnosis. And it might be a new
it's not even the study, it's the experience.
Right, to experience it. So that's a nice thing that you do. First, you go into what is causing this anxiety and what is the root cause. So what kinds of things have you often found is the root cause?
Well, a lot, people with social anxiety, I'm seeing a lot over and over again that if their parents fought a lot in front of them, and it was scary to be, what's your social environment? A significant portion of your social environment is being home, especially when you're younger, and your family is your social environment. So if they're fighting, that often is the root cause of one of the root causes of social anxiety. Overeating, there's just a lot of people have sexual abuse in their background from that are emotionally eating. I had a friend who said when she went to a 12-step group for eating that if you threw a nickel, you would hit everyone. I mean, virtually everyone there had been sexually abused. We all, whatever our childhood things the adverse childhood experiences that get talked about most from this study, and they're common with all of us, are, physical abuse, sexual abuse, parents who got divorced, a parent who was an alcoholic. Those are things that come up a lot. But also just more, critical parents who you were afraid they wouldn't love you unless you achieved. So you over a lot of IBS clients, you discover very quickly that they're having issues often at school or at work where they're afraid they're not going to live up to whatever they need to achieve. And that's the underlying cause of IBS quite often. Having a parent that's neglectful or an absent father shows up a lot. So those are the common ones.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. What a fascinating topic, and it's open to anyone. You have such an easy website. Tell us again where people can find you.
So first, I want to motivate people to go there. I have what I call my emotional overload first aid kit right there, and so it'll be a list of, it's like different buttons you can push. And so to get a free copy of my emotional overload first aid kit, just go to anxiety123.com. That's as easy as 123, anxiety123.com. And that actually walks you through the process of getting to a core wound underneath anything that's not working for you, anything that triggers you, whether it's anxiety or some other kind of trigger, anything that makes you uncomfortable. You can use this process that I outlined step by step in the emotional overload first aid kit.
Well, thank you so much, Mahesh. We're going to sign off here. So
okay, great.
Again. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.